Everybody knows me now. I just be thinking it don't slow down. But when nigga let me in the rock stone, wake up, better on my head. Life was wasted, kissing for assistance. Working on my real family with love, but I'm not doing it. Free all my friends from the George, they can't be cool. Free all mine. We smoke the right cause we divine. I scope the vision with three eyes. I'm a legend, I'm outline. I'm Papa, I won't be proper. Boom shot, back in my first hours. Don't go. Stacking down the and top of fucking doors and leave my love. I stacking focus on my head like a sit open and massage it hard.
Sorry about the light for a second.
I'm gonna say what I need. If it's the last thing I do, I
I'm going to use this just for those who are joining us on the live stream.
Sounds good.
Okay. Great. Thanks for coming, everybody. Really, really excited and happy to have NIC Kay join us today. NIC Kay is an interdisciplinary artist, performer, and conceptual choreographer who works with movement to explore relationality and yearning in their own beautiful words that I'm reading, literally off this page to you. They use choreography and movement to excavate relationships, sometimes very subtle, beautiful ones between spaces, bodies, and objects, in order to shift meaning and change perceptions of place. And the way that I became aware of their work was literally through that process. Nick has been working for the last year and change at Stone Quarry Hill Art Park in Casanova. And there's this piece on the side of the barn that I walked past for the better part of 6 months that had this very slow, long-term effect on me over time. And I'm still figuring out my relationship to it. I feel like that, from what I know of your work, is kind of in a nutshell. It's got this beautiful, long-term, durational pull, gravitational pull. Right now, there are fresh off being the 2001 Artist in Resident at the New Museum in New York City and working towards early 2022 exhibitions at the Contemporary, Lattice Institute for Contemporary Arts in San Francisco and the Tufts University Gallery. And yeah, welcome Nick, thanks so much for joining us.
Should I use a microphone too?
If you prefer.
Is it better
It should
for the live
be-
stream, or is it just okay to talk?
We could go microphone.
Yeah. I just can hold it. I don't have to do anything fancy. Yeah. Cool. Great. Hello. It's been a long day. Deep breath, right? Cold outside. Let's turn James Blake off. Is it cool? Is it alright if we have the lights off, or do we have to have them on?
We can turn them off. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that alright with you guys? I feel like it's a nice vibe. Yeah. So yes, my name is NIC Kay. Clearly, it's been here for a while. Thank you once again for the invitation. Wells College is beautiful. It's my first time here. I was just hanging out in the library. Wonderful vibes. So once again, thank you for that. So just a little bit of a background in addition to the bio. I've been making art for a really long time, but I would say seriously trying to make a career of it since like 2015. So a lot of what I'm going to show you is work that I've been making in that sort of concentrated time frame. Before that, I was working for a lot of established artists, doing assisting and performing for them, and really anything to try and figure out what I wanted to say, what sort of tools I needed to learn in order to build a portfolio and a career. So for complete transparency, a lot of what I'm going to be showing you guys and talking about is how I developed work to sort of exist in tandem to the words that I've developed for my practice. I always wanted to develop a conceptual performance practice. I always thought about choreography abstractly, but didn't really have anything to show what that meant in real time. So what I'm really trying to do here is figure out ways in which to take you along my journey as I have made the work, but also the way that I think about performance. And in this particular presentation, I'm going to be showing you via like a sonic lens how I have built some of what I would say are my favorite performances. So we're going to start with Get Well Soon. Get Well Soon was, or is, let's talk about it, past, present, future. Get Well Soon is a project in which I started around 2015. I was working on a one-person show called Little Black, and Sandra Bland's death had just been announced, and the videos of the altercation with the police were all over the internet, and I had a critique at a dance studio, and it was like the last thing I wanted to do. The piece was about like little black girlhood and coming into one's own gender identity and what it means to, you know, be born in a body and then like identify in different ways. And it was just way too much embodied memory, and it was so much for me to hold. And the facilitators kept sort of like circling around the pain that was present, not just in the material, but in real life, in current events. And I was told at one point during the process that we would get well soon. And it was one of these little worms that crawl inside you and like start planting eggs. And I started thinking about the temporality of that, right? Like the soonness, right? What could do that? What could expedite some sort of healing? Could one heal generational trauma in relationship to oppression and colonialism and imperialism? What sort of tools and could a performance practice lend to this sort of inquiry? And what is the sort of impossibility of the stage as a space to even have that sort of conversation due to the inherent power dynamics between myself as a Black, queer, GNC performer and the white institution as it is, right? So what was exciting about the proposal was that it was a way to think in real time about the things that were affecting me instead of it being sort of a barrier to being able to show up and do the quote-unquote work. The work for me became, how do I think about all these things in real time and have conversations with curators and programmers about it as the work, and sort of force care for me as I was doing it. It was a lot of challenges, but it was really awesome. So the way I set it up was I created different exercises in Getting Well Soon. So the first exercise is called Push It. And I'm going to play you a video and then tell you why I'm showing it to you. Maybe you know OT Genesis, maybe you don't.
I was mobbing through the beach, yeah, the city by the sea. Mama tried to keep me home, but I love the fucking street. I was cooking up a key, trying to serve it to the street. Couple niggas had beef, so I had to cheat key. I got homies from the 2, I got homies from the 3. I keep everything neutral, I just wanna smoke a leaf. I was running up a check, trust me, he gon' get the tag. Hear a lot of niggas talk, ain't a nigga press me yet. I'm in Houston, V live, throwing rack, that's a bet. And you ain't a real nigga if you don't whip your set. Push, 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 push. Go get the money, go get the money. 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 Push, 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 push.
Okay, so this is OT Genesis. The song is Push It. I believe this was 2016. What comes next? We have this video on YouTube of this really awesome little boy being encouraged by someone behind the camera.
I was mobbing through the beach, yeah, the city by the sea. Mama tried to keep me home, but I love the fucking street. I was good
is being in conversation with Black cultural production, sonic histories, movement histories, and at this time it was popular music, and it was something that I was vibing with. And what was really exciting to me was the way that the sound was being translated into different zones, right? So let's take it a little step further. Okay. So essentially what I just brought you through very quickly is where I began in terms of the concept, the idea, and then my sort of sonic interests. Where we are at right now is movement research at Judson Church in New York City. So often a lot of what I'm doing is site responsive. So at this moment, I had movement based residency in what is one of a very legendary downtown dance space. So that was something that I was excited about being in conversation with, and was excited to see what movement could bring to the idea of getting well soon. What Push It was essentially was how to create an exercise in which I could physicalize, but I guess physicalize is not the best word, but like materialize in the actions the labor of making the work, of showing up to do the thing. Right here was a display of like the movement vocabulary. This is the first time that at this point that I have ever done this work. After this, I was excited about how to push myself to highlight all the things that come before and after as a performer and as a Black, queer, GNC performer that is the performance, right? And so much of Blackness is performative in the way that you live and treated, that was very exciting to me, which pushed me to think about all of the steps and the movement and the choreography that comes before this. I was excited in this moment to use the space to allow people to see different perspectives and sight lines and see my body in both what feels like impossible situations and challenging situations. But you know, the thing about traditional movement spaces is that the body is cared for in ways that it isn't considered in other architectural spaces or other landscapes. So there was also something about the material environment that wasn't true to the conversation that I was trying to have movement-wise about my Blackness and my Black body. So I wanted to take this out of just what is considered a quote-unquote performance space. So what I proposed after this was to create a performance in which, right? Some water. To create a performance in which started in an outside space, a designated area. Usually I was trying to find an area where Black and brown people lived as a way in which to, one, have conversations with other Black and brown people, which, as I mentioned, often is not happening in the spaces in which I was invited to perform. So sort of circumventing that programmatic challenge by finding the location I wanted to start at. And interestingly enough, most art venues, whether in the United States or in other places, they're often in previously industrialized neighborhoods or Black and brown neighborhoods that are being gentrified or flipped or whatever the case is. So it wasn't very difficult to find a starting point. I think the furthest I've ever been from what was the performance space was like an hour and a half, but that's really also based on how slow or fast I was moving based on the environment. So in this particular performance that I'm going to show you, I was in Berlin at the Academy de Kunst, and I started outside, and an exciting part of the choreography as it shifted to a more conceptual practice is you have concrete, you have sand, you have marble, you have stairs. All these things shift, for me, how I can perform and enact the things with my body. And allowing those things to affect me instead of what you're taught in performances to, sort of master the moves in such that there is nothing that can affect that. And that challenge and that tension is what was really exciting for me with this exercise, to continue to allow the performance itself to be research. what else would I say about this? The sound is only present for the audience the last 15 minutes of the performance. So if people, stumble upon me on the street, sound is what sound does, which is around, voices, my breath, whatever the case is. If whoever it is makes it to the end, they most likely will hear the track that sort of started off this section. But for the most part, it's silence. The balloons from the first performance, I think at that point it was like 6 or 7 latex balloons. At this point it's 20 latex balloons filled with helium and foil disco ball balloon also filled with helium in terms of the materials. any questions or just anything before I move on? I don't want to move too fast. Yeah? Okay, cool. So that was the first exercise in getting well soon, push it. I think in total, I had like maybe 10 or 11 exercises. I don't really imagine things having a finale of sorts. So it's an ongoing thing, but I don't imagine myself ever performing Push It again. The last time I performed that work was in February of 2020. Yes, so like right before lockdown. It was in Pomona, California, and it was a very difficult performance, and every time I went to a location, I was grappling with the choices that I made in the comfort of my home or in my studio. Sometimes it felt like really important and resonant, and I was grappling with the questions and more that I had shared with you guys, and I was able to be with wonderful people on the street. And then other times I just couldn't stand behind my own choices. Sometimes the balloons just felt wrong, and it was something that I had to follow through with, right? So if 10 to 20 minutes into the performance it felt wrong, and I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I have an hour and 45 minutes left, I just have to, take that L and be with what it means to be in like live, time-based work. And it became difficult, and I felt I learned other ways to have similar conversations that didn't put myself at such risk, not physically, but more so emotionally. So it's definitely a wonderful work to watch in retrospect, but I think I've learned different ways to have similar conversations. But the rest of the exercises continue, and I'm thinking of different ways in which to talk and show that work without having to show video. So that's a really exciting thing that I'm working on right now in the studio. Hashtag Black Pride. Look, let's try it again. Hashtag Black People Dancing on the Internet is something that started with me just wanting to see other Black people dancing. I think so much of what I long for is a collectivity that often isn't possible to a wide array, because of a wide array of things. A lot of times, the people that I love, due to immigration and migration, are always in the same spaces, whether it be because of housing challenges or we're working. Just there's so many ways in which I'd like to be with Black people that I know and I don't know that's not possible. And through the internet, I'm able to hang out and talk and see other Black people dance. And I started doing this years ago on YouTube, and the way that I tried to find things was just by putting Black people dancing on the internet. And at first, not much came up, and the things that did come up were awful. But over time, I started to collect things and create archives and ask myself questions like, why do they do Chicago footwork in Chicago? And then why in New York City do we get light? What's the difference? What comes before the techno music or Chicago jit? Just trying to understand the connection between the movement and the music, and what happens regionally and nationally, and also what is in many ways African diasporic dance practices, and where do I fit within that? And this longing really to be a part of a larger community that in many ways hasn't existed for me in one space. So that was just me leisurely doing research, and then in 2019 I formally started to think of more ways in which I could use the internet as a formal stage and not just as research or just hanging out and sharing things. And through my residency with the New Museum, I created a series of proposals, and one was to try and investigate the ways in which not only was music and movement being shared across the African diaspora through these videos, but there are a lot of culturally coded play, right? There's no way to like extract the sound of techno from Chicago and Detroit without also not having the political history and the history of like migration from the South to those areas. And what is the like movement that happens in terms of knowledge on the internet when you start interacting with a different region and learning the music and the sound and the history and what the political potentials are in terms of advocation and sort of like creating liberatory practices, right? So that's very large questions, but a lot of times these things are happening underlying and we don't know until things pop off. So I was excited to watch these videos and to ask these questions. I started with sharing content on my own Instagram and thinking about ways in which each social media platform provides a different opportunity for an audience, but also like aesthetic choices, right? So no one's watching a 3-minute TikTok, it's not happening, right? But what can you do in 30 seconds? A TikTok that you could do, say, in 3 minutes on YouTube, and really trying to zone into those differences as a way to make content, but also making content in a way that is boring, because I'm not necessarily interested in being an influencer or spending that time being a creator. I have a lot of respect for people who are influencers and content creators online. It's a very different lifestyle, and it's just not a responsibility that I want. So that also being a part of it. So the first thing I started, to return to sound. So one thing about the internet, right, is that like once something is hot, it's everywhere. And this song was everywhere for a very long time, specifically also due to COVID. And I was really excited about making this a part of hashtag Black People Dancing on the Internet. Most people don't know that this song is called Lottery, and the artist whose song it is called Kay. So we're just gonna play his song for a second. Ooh, no, that's Julia. Let's try it again.
Wait.
Cash on me, like I hit the lottery. Chill, watch on how they follow me. Wait, honey's blue, yeah, I got them all on me. Go, let's go.
So this song is about 3 minutes, but really what's most popular is like 20 seconds of the song. So that's the reality of that, right? But this is Kay, and the song is Lottery, and this is Jalea Harmon, and she is essentially the like catalyst for what was an extreme viral dance moment in this is the dance.
Wait.
Cash on me, like I hit the lottery.
All right. Okay.
Wait.
Okay. So essentially the way that this popped up on my radar was Jalea created this dance. Most people didn't know that. The dance became very popular through other TikTokers and people on YouTube, mostly white TikTokers, were getting a lot of credit in the form of exposure, Jimmy Kimmel, Super Bowl, etc., etc. It's not new, there's a precedent for it, but what was really amazing is that there was like a wave of support, specifically from Black creators, Black Twitter, a lot of other POC folks online to figure out ways to uplift her. And then there was a wave of centering her and having conversations around ownership. And what I thought was really great was a way to talk about Black performance histories in the United States and the way that Black dance is in many ways American dance, and the ways that you actually don't have to see a Black person moving in real time anymore to see a Black person moving, because Black people are so synonymous with dance. So how could I talk about the Renegade as a viral dance without dancing it myself and showing Jalea, but at the same time creating an opportunity to talk about her, but also this history and this past, right? I mean, when I talk to people who are into dance history, we can go to like Elvis and the Twist, right? And some people may smirk and be like, what? Some people may be like, who's Elvis? And the point is that it's a precedent in this country of youth movements starting in Black and brown communities becoming popular and white artists being influenced by. I don't think that there's often like a salacious, a negative intent, but there's a power structure, there's a power dynamic, and I think what I'm interested in doing is how to talk about these things in a complex way, but also in a distilled aesthetic. So what I was interested in doing was trying to extract what part of the song is sort of looked over, which is the language, the textual part of the song, that is just as repetitive as the movement, and trying to figure out through this resequencing of the sound and highlighting the text if I could recreate sort of like the overwhelming feeling of the let's say this, virality, can we say that? I love that, okay. Words! I'm gonna show you the video. Start again.
Wait. Wait.
So as I have been talking, just to rewind to the beginning, when I was mentioning wanting to figure out ways in which to create a conceptual performance practice and to think about choreography, not just as something that's happening in my body and in other bodies, as directions, how to move in space, but also the way that architecture and planning affect and control and encourage and suggest different ways of being in space. I wanted to figure out a way to then take the video that I just made, that I just shared with you guys, that I made for YouTube, and figure out how I could create that sort of poetics in real time. So this past summer in the Hudson Valley, so that's like Rhinebeck and Kingston and Tivoli and Hudson and all of those small towns in that area. I created these lawn signs with the visual language from the video. I was really excited to create viral imagery in real time, that sort of harnessing that same sort of anticipatory feeling, the feeling of also joining in on learning the dance, right? So are you in the know? Do you know the renegade? Do you know how to do the dance? Do you know, could that also translate to, you know, what the weight is for, or what the route is? So I made these long signs, right? The visual language up here for the most part, specifically in this area, there isn't a lot of billboards. And most of the text that you're seeing is political advertisements or advertisements for like landscaping and things like that. And it's really the only places that the eye is jumping between the green and like stop signs and things like that. So I thought it was a really great opportunity to sort of mark place where I have been, but also sort of creating a flow for other people. So I created these lawn signs, about 150 of them, and dispersed them around the area. There was no sound component. Sort of floated in the space. The first time I started reintroducing video was right before this exhibition. I did a performance in which I was in a room like this. It was about 70 people. We were in a circle, and I had texted them, no, I emailed them the video that I just showed you. And what proceeded to happen was sort of like a cacophony of sound. Everyone in the room became sort of like an instrument, and the weight was more of a sonic experience than a visual experience, which was a really wonderful thing. But it was one of these performances that's ephemeral, and there's really no way to reproduce and or document. And I think that's a really great thing, but also a challenging thing when you want to tell people about it. In this exhibition, I was excited to create this QR code that was about 5 feet as the thing, as an invitation to have a more intimate experience with the material. So if you walked into this room where the camera, where you see the angle is, you would hear the video being played, but you wouldn't know who it was coming from, and it would sort of be an invitation for you to participate and or watch the people who become performers. So once again, really trying to think about this idea of the individual and the collective and the joining in and the anticipation that I felt in this original video, but distilling it and abstracting it a little bit more. The second time that I paired the sign with the QR code was in a storefront in Hudson, and I thought it would be a really interesting way. And the store is super designy, so I thought it would be on par with them to have that type of display in their window. This was a very large sign that I made for the side of a barn in Red Hook, New York. Same language. Most people would be seeing this from like 30 to 40 feet away. So that it also in many ways became like quite small in relationship to the landscape, and that was something that I was really excited to take on materially. So yeah, this I would say for me is a really exciting part of hashtag Black People Dancing on the Internet, because for me this is still a dance. There is still something very potent and loudly sonic about it, but it isn't an easy read, and that's exciting. The next work that I'm going to share with you is based off of this song by Theo Parrish. It's a beautiful song. So I typically, when I go to the studio, I create videos of myself in real time in space moving. It's a way for me to process where I'm at in the moment in my body. It's sort of like a free writing practice. I made some videos today in the beautiful library. And often what happens is I look back at those videos, and sometimes it's just for fun, other times it's to create new works for live performance. And in this instance, in the video, I was doing something with my hands in my head that I had never seen myself do before, and I was really excited about the obscuring of my face and what face becoming, the obscuring of my face and what that could do in terms of my relationship with the audience and their expectations of me, and sort of emphasizing those things by removing that intimacy. So I saw this video of myself, I zoomed in and I edited the video so that I could do things with myself on video that I couldn't have done in real time, if that makes sense. So in the video you'll see me doing things choreographically I couldn't have physically done, and that's something that I love about the internet and video editing, is the glitch, the pause, and how to create that, recreate that for live performances. Always something that I'm trying to achieve. So what I decided to do after, so I created this video and I shared it on YouTube. We're still in the world of Black people dancing on the internet. And I was really excited, once again, to push this idea of like the sort of scrambling the expectations and longing from the audience or the viewer for the body and the intimacy and wanting to know what was happening, wanting to anticipate. So what would, essentially what I did was decided to create a book dance for transparent plastic photo albums. It's 26 images, and the images are lifted directly from the video. And essentially I'm trying to choreograph based on the video for this sort of sculptural setup, and inviting people to be with me in this way and choreograph and rearrange and be with this moment. Once again, the sound isn't present, but because the sound has created the rhythm and the shape, for me it is very loudly silent. And book art is something that it has been through a line in terms of my interdisciplinary interest, so I'm often thinking about ways in which the audience or the viewer's hands can be an active part of my performative explorations. So this was very exciting for me to be able to do. From that, four-part book dance, I decided to learn that choreography from the book for live performance. So I'm just doing the most, right? I'm like continuing to do the most, trying to think about how to continue to reiterate and translate and deconstruct and see what sort of material comes from that. And also for me to like, I ask myself all the time, why the stage, why the page, why the book, why, you know, the monologue. And sometimes for me, it's hard to be in live performance because I can't answer the question of why. Why am I on stage and what is it serving? So it was really exciting to have this sort of like technical challenge. This piece was my first performance after COVID, so the last time I had performed live was a very long time ago at this point. And this was the first time I had ever been in a room specifically for in a curation for Black, trans, masculine folks. It was amazing. And interestingly enough, the performance is called Us, For Is This, and This Is For Us. So it was a very charged moment for me. And I attempted to perform choreography from the book. Oh, nope, that's not it. There you go. I'm gonna fast forward because it's quite long. Was that I didn't think about my lower half of my body. So I had been like so wrapped in the translation of the idea that I really didn't think about until I was in front of the audience. Everything below my chest, which presented quite a lot of opportunities, but also challenges in that moment. But it was wonderful. Also to in my mind be dancing a picture rather than like actual movement, which meant that the audience really could not see my face. because I was orienting myself so far away from their gaze, which was something I didn't also anticipate. It was a really wonderful opportunity. And because of that sort of no flex zone that I created on myself, I collected via like people's stories, their documentation to kind of see where they were, and what they saw, and what they were interested in based in the performance. And I created a compilation of their documentation of the performance to sort of think about it more as like a live thing. Yeah. Sort of like as like a way to show people what happened. And it was really exciting. It was super touching. There was a lot of moments that you can see from this to what I was, you know, what the formal documentation was, that was sort of lost in between. And there is something really beautiful about how people zoom in and how people were in those moments, and sort of holding on to that and pausing and rehearsing. That felt more timely than the video that I just showed you. Where are we on time? Another hour?
Oh, no, we're at.
Oh, okay. How much time do we have? It was an hour.
How much time you got? Just kidding.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we should be wrapping up.
Leave
Right?
some time for questions.
Okay, because that's what I thought. Okay, so I'm doing good. This is an exhibition shot of the book dance after that performance. So thinking a little bit more about how people move around it. Due to COVID, there were some restrictions on people being able to be touch-wise with the materials, trying to figure out how to angle it and position it sculpturally so that they could have somewhat of a close experience with it. Thank you. That was, I literally close to time. That was my presentation. If you want to follow any of the things that I'm doing, this is my handle across social media. I am often posting about things, and you can find continuous work attached to the hashtag Black People Dancing on the Internet. And the last thing I'm going to show you, in the interest of time, if you want to like maybe get some water or something before we do some questions. This is brown shades of black, and brown is lowercase b, and black is capital B. And essentially it's Pantone shades of brown coupled with audio from different videos on YouTube of Black people either doing dance instruction or dancing. So I'm gonna let that play, do what you need to do, and say, like, I think the video is like 3 minutes, and we can come back and do some talking. Yeah? Okay, cool. Thank you so much for being here.
Said big bad tossing out the big bag of cake. Ooh, I'm back. Yes. Ooh, crack. Boogie, look. Bop, 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 bop. Bop, then it, lean, then it, up, Dennis up. Is this Dennis hot?
Listen, got a lot of exciting things going on. This next dance, I'm gonna change the name of it, but don't get caught up in names. Somebody from Baltimore came up here, saw this dance. They went back to Baltimore and called it the New Jersey Strut. Somebody from New Jersey went down to Baltimore, came back up here, taught us the dance, and called it the Baltimore. So we call this dance the Baltimore. Again, don't get caught up in names. Y'all ready to do this? Now I'm gonna break it down for you. I'm gonna break it down real slow.
This move is called the Ghost. This move is called the Ghost.
This move is called the Ghost. This move is called the Ghost.
When you go back, 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 when you go back.
Awesome. All right, that's that. Had a little bit of break. Did you want to come here and talk, or do you want to facilitate, or how do you want to do it?
I think this could be pretty casual. I'm sure
Awesome.
she's have questions I know I do.
Awesome, let's do that then.
Yeah, we have, this is new to me, but we apparently have this, mobile question asking device.
Wow.
Passed around. Does anyone have a burning question, or shall I start it out? Burning question? Oh,
No,
okay.
I meant for you to start out.
All right, okay. Okay. Yeah, I know. I feel like I'm gonna sell a car. I've been really enjoying this whole talk, how the idea of choreography in a score has been really unraveled. And I'm interested in how the body is the thing that unravels them, because that's a reversal for me. I think of a score or a choreographic as something that, you know, it tells the body what it can expect.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a reversal, so I'm wondering if that is how you're thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would say what that brings me to is one of the points where I knew that I wasn't so interested in dance in a traditional virtuosic aesthetic way was when I was thinking about so breakdancing. I'm from the Bronx, so breakdancing is something that proliferated in the Bronx, right? At a time in which arts education was cut in the cities, and young people, specifically, the areas where I come from, were in low-income housing, public housing, gathering in concrete parks, right? To do what was seemingly impossible, which is to find ways to shape and bend and twist their bodies to create new ways of being, right? But on what is one of the most unforgiving materials ever, which is concrete, right? So what, for me, was the impetus? I'm what was the urgency? What was the desire that created the need for that type of physical response to the environment, response to the political climate? And that is what, for me, is is choreography, right? The conditions of their lives, based on the power that they did and did not have, was decided by the government, right? Or decided by the architects of the public housing, how wide the playground was, the materials that they had to interact with in terms of their body. It was not their choice, but what they did choose was how to respond, how to move around and in and below and above that. And for me, growing up in New York City and being an embodied learner, practice person in general, I think that's where my interest in dance as just a person and choreography sort of collided. Is why? Why now? Why here? Why this urgency? And what can the birth of this thing tell us about the political climate, right? And about like the ingenuity, right? We often talk about that, but and a little further in terms of choreography and movement, collectively, you know, breakdancing is something that is extremely important in terms of international conversations around like poor and working class people and finding ways in which to find joy and transcendence in their bodies, ways to like collectivize and talk about fighting oppressive structures through this movement, right? And I think thinking about it as choreography, not just of the body, but of like response is what I'm thinking about in sort of like a duality, both as an aesthetic, but also like a conceptual score type thing.
Thank you.
Throw it. It's too late. It's too late for that.
I'll go to the next person. I was just kind of curious to hear more about your relationship to the balloons, like what the balloons signified, and if latex was like, you know, why.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on a basic level, I'm interested in art, like like eye candy elements, right? So ways in which that you can call attention to something. I'm like talking about really complex things sometimes that people like, oh, that's too heavy or that's too didactic, right? Like let's talk about oppressive structures and like racism and anti-blackness. But materially, balloons are something that most people cannot deny, even if they don't like the sound of a balloon bursting. The anticipation of it potentially bursting is intriguing to them. So I was like, this is very interesting, simple to play with. Also, the idea that like one will follow balloons, right? You have the famous movie, The Red Balloons, favorite of mine. So these things are playing into it, and then also the play between like breath play, right? So like not having breath can both be something that's pleasurable but also clearly dangerous because we need it. And there was something when I was in the studio playing with the balloons that was like very choreographically like satisfying between what meant to get myself into certain like tricky positions and then get myself out of it, and what the helium could do for me in terms of like weight and pull. So like on a very like basic level, I was just excited to play with the balloons, right? But then when I saw myself, there was this image that I had to contend with, which I think in so many ways is what I'm often trying to describe to people about like when you take the stage as a Black performer, you're inherently performing with, beside, above everyone who's come before, right? Like there's no way, in my understanding, right? It's like you can't look at Chris Brown dancing on stage without seeing Michael Jackson. That's just me, right? Like it's just, there's a trajectory there, right? So contending with that, contending with my image and these balloons and my desire to have a completely different conversation, but have to contend with the fact that I can't ever have anything around my neck without contending with the history of violence against Black people, specifically in relationship to lynching. And that was something that in the beginning I thought that I can hold space for. I was like, that is wonderful, right? The breath being taken away as something that's pleasurable and dangerous, the image both being something that's playful and heavy and devastating, specifically depending on where you are, right? How far you are away from my body, the shapes that my body are in and stuff like that. So that was really what the balloons did for me. Latex, clear. I thought it was like a very like simple palette. I tend to like to work with like muted colors, trying to like take as much away. Because like if it was red, then of course it'd be the red balloon, right? So trying to strip all that away as much as possible so that people can have a little bit more room to come to conclusions or not on their own is often what I like to do. And the disco ball or the like silver foil balloon was just like a nod to like gay cultural spaces and also the way that like silver and disco balloons like carry and shine light. So I thought in instances optically where I'm in spaces where the white balloons sort of like flush out because of lighting, the silver balloon would be a really good offset, is what I thought on like an aesthetic level. So that's like me rolling around, like, you know what I mean, taking a nap, waking up, like having these conversations with myself in the studio. But yeah, like I said, it was very difficult, and now I have like tons of deflated balloons in my studio, and like I'm trying to think about ways to continue this exercise, but with allowing my body the rest and the break it deserves, because I've performed this by this time like at least 30 times, which is just like, that's the thing about performance too. It's like, it's different than creating an artist book or painting. It's like the investment in the timeline is unforgiving. Specifically if you're making work about pain, you know, even pain and pleasure, but still pain, you know? I will watch.
I'm curious how you got into like sound and video editing and just like your experience with that.
Yeah. It was interesting because I was preparing to come to this today and I had a flashback. I used to have like a boom box, and these boom boxes had like 2 cassettes players like together, and you could take the radio and you could over like, and I was always doing that as a kid, you know, just like trying to get the song I wanted and sort of messing with it. And I had this talent show that I said I was going to do that I was like completely unprepared for. And I had the night before put this whole thing together. And I think that's sort of how I started like sound and video editing, is just trying to figure out like what I wanted to happen versus like, a lot of times I will say I want things, like I'll speak things into existence before I know how to do it, right? Like I was saying about my performance practice, quote unquote. So then I have to figure out like how to bring that to reality, and it's usually like a fumbling, right? So like, I still use iMovie because it just works for me. Like, I don't have to think about the technique. I just know like that I want my body or whoever's bodies to do these things, and I can just like make that happen. So really the sound and video editing just began with like trying to like catch up to my mouth, you know, and like, you know, make something happen. And like over time I feel like there's just so many different tools. I'm like trying to set myself up for success by trying to figure out what works for me. And because I started working with things like manually, like I do more like sound mixing. I have like a Roland SP404, so like live sound mixing and recording helps. So just like trying to, you know, do a little bit of this and that, but sometimes like having an interdisciplinary performance practice means doing the most. So I also try like nowadays to pull back and figure out when I can get someone else who knows how to do it better than me to do it, versus like when is it integral to me to like have control of a particular moment, which is hard to define. I'm still trying to figure it out, but
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is such a powerful talk. My question, I think, picks up on some of the discussion about Get Well Soon and the balloons and thinking about pain. I'm like thinking through it. I formulate this as a question, but your whole talk, I was sort of processing some moments of that performance, like particularly the version on the stairwells. I was thinking a lot about like these moments where like I was like feeling some like pain through your body, like the sort of like bone against the hard concrete, and then you were wedging yourself into the stairs. And I think particularly that moment that you kind of fold over your neck and like the balloon popped. And then I was really struck that you would describe that piece as something that was an emotional risk, but not necessarily a physical risk. And I guess I'm just sort of wondering about the aspects of that piece. Like, were there moments of physical risk and those like precarious ways you were balancing on the stairs? And then I'm also wondering about that in relationship to the way you talked about adapting that piece based on the space that you were in and how that worked, and sort of maybe thinking about the difference between the two versions of the performance that you showed.
Absolutely. I would start off by saying that, like, I'm an able-bodied person, and I have the ability to do things with my body that I would say are wonderful and surprising to me a lot of times. So, and I try and do what I know how to do. So I'm not a classically trained dancer. I'm just like someone who can do fun things with my body, and I try and like focus as much as possible on that, right? So like, if I have a particular type of flexibility, that's what the choreography is going to be. So from the first video to the second one, there was a particular move that I did, and I'll show you, that is the foundation for everything, which is like a wide extension, and then I like bend my knee, and then I put the other knee down. That essentially is like 75% of the entire thing. Because like when I'm on the stairs, that gives me the ability to like use gravity in moments where I like physically can no longer like hold my own weight, you know, with my muscles. So like tricks like that are really helpful and super fun if you like being in your body and like problem solving. So things that look really difficult actually were just a puzzle, right? So like if I'm on the stairs and I'm like in a weird position, it's like maybe a matter of like shifting my ankle in the opposite direction and then like laying down and then turning can look so magnificently hard, and it was like the easiest choice, you know? So I mean, as a performer, it's wonderful to be able to do that in real time, because I don't rehearse in relationship to like how things are going to go, but in terms of the different environments for safety, I do go through, like in Cincinnati, I was at the CAC and I performed, and it was like the longest, it was like one of the longest walks. It was like almost 2 hours, and I did it, the like choreography was 2 hours. Just doing it itself was like 45 minutes, and I looked for glass, I looked for things like that to just try and figure out like what does it need to actually happen, and like what could my costume get caught on, things like that. And that usually is enough to be able to make it happen. And I'm not like so in the zone that I can't see and be aware. And at some point I started to have the curator or someone who's adjacent to the curator be close to me to facilitate if anyone like engaged with me physically, which only happened once. And I would say that was the only time where I felt unsafe, but really most of the times it was like an emotional unsafety, like people not being here for me as a person, whereas like my body often was fine, which is a really interesting aspect of the piece. The performing, I did the piece once in an environment that was like concrete, then like a buffed concrete, so it wasn't marble, but it was like very smooth, that then went to gravel rocks, that then went to sand. That was very difficult, that was very challenging. But there was moments also where I would have to like relinquish the idea that like I had to be interesting, because the performance is like not actually about that. A lot of it is really boring and mundane, because if you're watching me for an hour or 2 hours walk from one place to the other, a lot of it is really walking, right? And like trying to figure out how to cross the street, or if I do get in a moment where I'm laid out on the floor or twisted, how to do so in reality, right? So, so much of it was just like encouraging myself to be the author of it and not feel the pressure of what it's like to perform, which is the challenge, right? Like, people are looking at you, do something interesting, and like holding the intention. Was difficult.
I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about
Mm, yeah. I try to keep it pretty consistent, also in relationship to like symbols and associations and things like that. So a white t-shirt and jeans, I think it's like a uniform that so many people have and have their own intimacy with, that it's not like you wearing a yellow suit, which would become like me as a character. So trying to peel back as much as possible to sort of become myself, but also maybe like anyone in a way. So a lot of the videos I have or performances, I have like some sort of jeans, a white t-shirt, this, and then another thing for hashtag Black People Dancing on Pinterest. Push It, I think, is like one of the most elaborate costumes I've ever had, which is like this galaxy, this black galaxy bodysuit, right? And I had it, and I never could make sense of it because I don't really wear things like that, but I bought it for a party. And then when I was getting ready for this performance, I was like, okay, what does one wear with these balloons? You know, and I was thinking of like the idea of like the leader of a marching band, or like, you know, like a Pied Piper. It can't be something too eccentric that people call you into question, you know? But it has to be something interesting enough that people would like want to know more. So I was like, oh, I think this is probably one of the most interesting things that I have that can be normal sort of, because it's like black and white and the colors aren't too random, but then it is kind of interesting. And then gender-wise, I also really like spandex because it provides an opportunity for the parts of the body that usually could be obscured for me and my body type because of like drape and silhouette to be for view. And I knew that was going to be a part of the challenge of also being in public. It's like people's perceptions and wanting to understand what was happening. And part of that was also like who I am as a person. And in the spandex bodysuit, people still have a lot of wonderfully horrible and interesting things to say about my gender identity. So I stuck with the bodysuit, and the first version you see had like a blue sort of coat. I was very thinking like marching band thing, and then I was like, you know what, let's just lean into the bodysuit and like own that, I guess the conversation that often is hard to have with people about being like a trans GNC person, where you're like grappling with one's identification, how you want to be seen in the world, and how people see you. And sometimes in the body that I am in the span of a half an hour, it could be like 4 different things, right? And in that performance, that's happening like, you know, all the time. And having that, I'm not telling that through a monologue. It's by inviting people to be with me for half an hour, an hour, 2 hours, that they are with that reality, right? So if someone's like, is that a bitch, or is that, you know what I mean, da, da, da. I didn't create that, you know, I just put myself in a position in which the reality of what it means to show up to do my job is that I have to navigate that type of like opinions or curiosity. So the spandex bodysuit stayed, and I never changed it, so the bodysuit is really raggedy at the moment, which is also part of why I'm like, I just can't continue to, you know, because it just feels like final in some ways.
Okay, so I was wondering, like, if you could talk more about, like, the glitch in the way where you were, like, making these audio tracks that were, like, glitching, or, like, even the videos. I was wondering more about, like, what that meant to you.
So glitch, interruption, pause. I think so much about it is like what happens in those moments to me when I'm seeing it happen, whether in real time, like once again, to return to New York City and like the beginnings of my interest in this type of conceptual performance, right? So I grew up in a time where people were using drugs like opioids And often what would happen is that people would be in a moment of like elation and would get stuck, right, in that place. And as a child, I think that was an image that I found like really poetic and really curious, that sort of pause. And then I think as time went by and I had different experiences, I wondered what it could be like to recreate those things as sort of memorial for people who are no longer in physical space in like where I grew up, like in the hood, and what it means in a more complex way, and then what it felt like in my body. And it just, you know, in poetry you could say again and again and again and again and again and again, right? And it like evokes a particular type of image and feeling, and I wanted to know how to do that in performance and in choreography without it being like, you know, and again, you know what I mean, and again. And I think there is something about the body that looks sort of like pedestrian, but it, like to hover over the ground is a feat, right, of the muscles, right, which is happening because of a response to you taking this drug. And I'm not, you know, I'm like harm reductionist, I'm like not judging people for their drug usage, but I'm interested in what's happening based on one's desire. So that's where that came from, and I started doing like my own practice of like figuring out like what that feels like in my body. And then it felt maybe a little too intimate for stage performance, just the way that, where I was at the time. So I started using video editing as a way to think about that. It felt like enough of a removal from my blackness and the viewer for it to be safe. I guess that's what I can say. And this video was the first time I like went full force and did it like continuously. Yeah, and there's something for me like really, really beautiful about thinking about the people who I was with, who were struggling, who were like living their lives. And so much of what that time period was like shame, right? There was like so much shame around Black people and their drug use. And now it's a completely different conversation around drug use, specifically when it comes to like opioids, that doing the movement and being with the movement for me is like meditation and being with that challenge, right? Like sometimes like the unfairness of what it means to be in one's body and be judged for how you are in your body, you know, regardless of like what other people's like perceptions of like what you should be doing. And I don't think it's like a cutaway to how I exist in my own like self, but I think sometimes it's a really great way to process my own personal narrative.
Thank you.
Two questions. So the first one is like how and when did you start identifying as an artist? Because your work is like very original and like very your own, but there's also this element of like where you come from and like people performing on the train and taking those elements. Where does that like originate from, or where did you find that in yourself? And then the second question is like, what part of the Bronx are you from?
Hey, VX. So I'm from the North Bronx, so that's like 2-5 train. My mom's family's Jamaican, so I'm Jamaican. So that's like Gun Hill Road, White Plains Road area. It's a beautiful space. It's hard to get to. But I mean, considering where we are right now, it isn't hard to get to, which is what I've learned about New York State. I would say what I'm trying to say often as like a Black and brown person is that like this dynamic between high and low art, and that like one has to go to school and like one has to reference a particular type of art historical or history of art canon is just like completely relevant to some, but not necessarily what I adhere to. I think it is a requirement to be creative and artistic and to be like a creative problem solver if you're going to be like a poor person in the world. I feel like poor Black and brown people are some of the most creative people ever, right? So much of the culture that I'm sharing with you is poor Black and brown people creating new genres, new ways of being in the world. So that's my trajectory. It's like I've always been around people who are creative. What it took was me being in my early 20s and being like, oh, I don't have to prove myself as an artist. I just have to validate that I have something to say, and I come from a place that has informed me, and I also don't have to like give everything away, right? So just like affirming that I know what I want and where I come from, and that I can also set boundaries with how I show that. And I say that because in the beginning, I talked about like how I wanted to create a career and like not having those things, and in that process, deciding that like, if I want to talk about breakdancing again, it's like a beautiful form, wonderful, right? But exploit it. So many of the young people who are now older people, in their 60s and late 50s, weren't able to be able to access the potentials financially and like, you know, culturally that they brought into being. And oftentimes, in order to seek the validation of what are like dominant art forms, we give away all of our stuff, right? It's like we want to join the team, we want to be there. I'm just as valid as contemporary dance or modern dance or Martha Graham, and they take all your things and you don't have anything. So a lot of what my process of owning myself as an artist has been, what are the parts of my practice that I want to show on a screen, and what parts of it are just for me. And I think that is what I would say how I came to understanding myself as an artist. Is like I come from artists, they do this, and because they've done this, I have a map. And I don't have to share everything, and I can share some cool stuff. And it's like up to me to decide.
That kind of felt like the best ending ever.
Cool! Thank you so much. It was so lovely talking to you guys. Super warm room. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Let's play some music to go out.